not a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it's good to see everybody here as we get ready to learn more about Jesus and the Lord's Supper. Today we're having communion, and here at Corinth we have open communion. As long as you have been saved and baptized, you're more than welcome to participate in observing the communion with us. And my sermon is focusing on the communion itself. As I was going through my classes, there would be times, especially when reading about Israel's history and how I would get the feeling, and I could see it, they hold on to the feelings of the experiences of previous generations. They claim it, they look at it as it's their own. They themselves personally went through it, even though they haven't. They have that belief, they hold into that. And I would kind of say, well, as we as Americans and Christians, we don't really have something like that we can grab onto, but we do. As I was preparing for this sermon, it hit me that as Christians, we call it a sacrament, but it's more. It's something that we need to claim for ourselves, as though we experienced it. The Greek word that was used, and I'm not too good on pronouncing some of these words. I'm not going to really go over it because I'll get it all wrong, I know, but it means remembrance, or to remember. But to the Jews, it was more than just a remembering of something. It meant you take, like I said, take a personal stock in it. It is something of yours. You remember, like when we graduate high school or college or whatever, we remember that, but we should also remember the joys that we went through with it when we were going through that experience. The joy of realizing that we completed all the classes, met all the requirements. We no longer have to worry about writing a 10-page, 20-page paper that's due the next day, unless we decide to go on to our doctorate or whatever. But you know, when you go through the actual experience, you have a joy in your heart because you realize you've completed it, and there's things you're not going to worry about, and you get a relief. It meant, the Greek word means to the Jews also meant a representation. I don't know if any of y'all have had the chance, but the Seder, which they observe at Passover, it is a meal, and each element is designed to evoke a feeling in the person that's observing it, to help them go back and understand and sort of experience what the actual Jews, when they were escaping from Egypt, experienced. There's salty water to remind them of the tears that were shed. There's bitter herbs. There's the bread is unleavened. And it's all designed to remind them that they were once in bondage, in slavery, but God delivered them. And Jews, they look at it when they're observing, they say, this is what the Lord did for me when I went out of Egypt. Now, we know Jews today didn't come out of Egypt in the Exodus, but they go back so far that they actually they insert themselves into that story. And they claim it as their own personal experience. And we as Christians should do that also when we observe the Lord's Supper. In our Bibles, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul writes, starting with verse 24, and when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, take, eat. This is my body which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also he took the cup when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as often as ye drink it in remembrance of me. So usually for our ears, when we hear the word remember, we just think of the event and what transpired. We don't really think of the pain and anguish of what Jesus was going to go through. But we need to, because this is our Exodus. This is what gives us faith in Christ and helps us to stand strong for Him. I believe that when we observe the Lord's Supper, in order for us to claim it for our own, we should say something similar to, this is what Jesus Christ did for me when I was freed from sin or from bondage of sin or slavery. Now, slavery is another word for, using it as another word for sin. We are in bondage to sin. But Jesus came and died on the cross, which is what this is representing, and by becoming that sacrifice, He gives us the ability to be freed from sin. So, as it says on the front of the table, do this in remembrance of me. Not only should we just remember what happened, but we should also remember the anguish and pain that He went through. Because He didn't have to go through it. Thankfully, I'm glad He did. Because if He had not done that, we wouldn't be able to gather here today and worship, nor would we observe the Lord's Supper. But because He freely went to the cross and gave His life as the ultimate sacrifice, we are able to join with Him and to try to experience His pain. I know we will never come close to the pain that He experienced. But the bread represents His body. Now in Luke 22, 19 through 20, he is telling us, he writes about when the event actually took place, the Last Supper, which is on my tie right here. This is supposed to be a representation of the Last Supper. And there, Jesus said, when he broke the bread, "This is my body." And that's as far as it says. Do this in remembrance of me, breaking the bread. That's because that happened. The supper took place before he was arrested and eventually crucified on the cross. And with the cup, it said, "Take and drink. This is the New Testament, or New Covenant, with you. It is my blood." In other words, his blood establishes a new covenant that we have. He is the ultimate sacrifice. We no longer have to bring sacrifices, animal sacrifices, like the Old Testament people did. We don't have to bring sacrifice at all because Jesus was the final sacrifice. And then my tie is actually a representation of the whole Easter story. It's got the Last Supper. He's in the garden praying before he's arrested. And then it kind of skips, but it goes to when he's carrying the cross. However, between the prayer and the cross, his body was broken and beaten, bruised. They had a cat of nine tails, whipping him with it, scourging him. And a cat of nine tails has got glass and bones and all sorts of different things in it that dig into the flesh and rip the flesh open. And so that's what the bread is representing, his broken body. When we break the bread, it is his body that's being represented. And then the blood. We drink grape juice as in the Bible they drank wine, but we drink grape juice. And it represents his blood. Represents the new covenant that he has established with us. And so each time we observe the Lord's Supper, we eat the bread, we are to remember and imagine the pain and agony he felt as cat of nine tails, the nails being driven into his hands and his feet when he's being nailed to the cross, the excruciating pain he was experiencing with all that. And then also, as he was hanging on the cross, moving up and down, because they say the way he was hanging, and anybody hanging on the cross, the way you have to raise up, try to get air in, and then you drop back down to exhale. And so your back is rubbing against that rough wooden upright beam of the cross. And so that's digging into your flesh also. Painful. And then we drink the cup, the wine, the grape juice. It's his blood. He says, "I did this because I love you. And I want you to have fellowship with me. My blood represents this. My blood saves you from sin. Just believe and accept my salvation." And so, as we get ready to observe in a few minutes, I'm going to offer an invitation. If anybody has not become a Christian yet and would like to, come down here to the front. Or if you get just pain and agony you just want to pour out to God and to Jesus, you're more than welcome to come down here to the altar and pray. or I'll be here in front available if you want to talk about anything. And just give it to God. It's like in the Sunday school lesson, one of the statements made was work out your salvation. Now, it's not talking about, well, you got to do this to be saved, or you got to do this to be saved, or this to be saved. It's not a checklist. The working out of your salvation is how much do you believe that God did this? And how much of your life are you giving back to God? Should you give back to God? That's what it's talking about by working out. But if you have never accepted Christ, just take the first step out. It'll be nerve-wracking and everything, but the minute you take that first step, the rest of them will just come real easy. So as I'm standing here at the front and we're singing hymn number 198.
If anybody wants to join,
yeah. If anybody wants to join the church, if there's anything you want to talk about, I'll be down here in front and more than happy to talk with you. Becoming a Christian, joining the church, anything. So just come on down.